Hello, my audience. Hello, my friends. This is Amy Goldschlager welcoming you to the May 2022 edition of the New York Review of Science Fiction reading series. And let's face it, we could all use a little escapism this evening. So tonight we have Robert V.S. Redick, who will be reading for us. And of course, producing for us behind the scenes will be Jim Freund, who is, in fact, the producer and senior host of this series. And of course, I will remind you that later we will be putting up the call for you to add donations so that we can keep this going. And also behind the scenes, we have Barbara Krasnoff, who will be doing the audience wrangling this evening. As you all know, we are streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube. And after Robert reads, we will be doing a Q&A. So keep the chat exciting. And if you have questions for Robert, please put them in the chat. Barbara will throw them my way and you will get your answers live. I know that will be super exciting. And Jim has in fact just reminded me behind the scenes, upcoming, our next reading will be the first Tuesday in June 2nd, and our reader will be A.T. Greenblatt, who I just realized I'm going to dinner with on Thursday. But since you won't be, make sure you come back here in June for that reading. In July, of course, we will have the thrilling writer TBA, who I know will be fantastic. And, really, that's about it, I think, for business right now. Just to remind you, right now, we're still keeping it virtual, both out of safety and also because I'm not sure exactly what our live location situation will be, but we'll keep you posted. But in the meantime, this allows all of us to stay healthy. And as somebody who's just come out on the other side of COVID myself, I feel that that is possibly a good idea. Anyway, as I said before, this reading series is not free. The streaming service costs money. So as do the equipment to get it going. So please use the link below to give to the Our Wolf PayPal, which is for our producer, Jim Freund, who keeps the series going. Okay, enough blather from me. Let me give you our author introduction. Robert V.S. Redick is a novelist, teacher, editor, and international development consultant with 30 years' experience in Latin America and Southeast Asia. He is the author of the Fire Sacraments epic fantasy series, including the recently published Sidewinders and the Chathrand Voyage Quartet. He is a winner of the new Millennium Writings Award and a finalist for the Booknest Award for Best Novel and the Thomas Dunne Novel Award. He's taught fiction writing in the Stonecoast and University of Nevada Reno MFA programs. He lives with his partner, Dr. Kiran Asher, in Western Massachusetts. And hello, Robert.
Hey, hi. Thanks for having me.
All right. Tell us all about this exciting story that you're going to read from.
Well, first I wanted to note, I've always wanted to read with TBA. They're such a good writer. One of these days. Or at least be on a panel with them or something. Yeah, well, I'm really honored to be reading with New York Review of Science Fiction. And I read from novels because novels are 99.9% of everything I've written in the last 20 years. And most of them have been these huge epic fantasies, which are challenging to read a little bit of, because unless you read from the very, very beginning of a novel, and when it's a series that tells one big story across 3 or 4 novels, it's been the case with my series, unless you read from the very beginning of the very first book, you spend half your time just giving context. So I wanted to do something different tonight, even though my writer day job, as it were, is the Fire Sacraments, and like Amy kindly said, Sidewinders, this big brick came out last summer, and I've got one more to go there. I did have time in the last few years to write one novelette. It was going to be a short, and it turned into a novelette, and lo and behold, Clarksworld wanted it and took it. I was stunned. Um, and it's called Vanishing Point. I worked on it for 8 years, which is, word by word, it's the most time I've taken on anything in my life. Of course, I was doing other things at the same time, but it's a bit too long to read all of tonight. This is a story in 8 parts, and I was going to read the first 4. Should probably take about 25 to 30 minutes to do. And so I apologize in advance that there's a little bit of a cliffhanger, but the good news is, of course, it's on Clarksworld. So when you want to find out how it ends, you can go right on over there. But anyway, I think you'll find out pretty quickly this is pretty stream of consciousness, so don't worry if you're if it's sort of washing over you. That's by design. And yeah, I guess I don't really need to tell you too much about what it entails, because it'll be self-evident. But here we go. Vanishing Point. Part 1, Eyepiece. Disaster, betrayal, and the ship already blasting its horn. The family clusters around the packing crates, destitute, stunned. We must go regardless, says their father. This is the last ship. What else can we do? Their mother nods, frowning so as not to cry. The girl and the boy stand expressionless, shoulder to shoulder, gaping at the bedlam of the port. The family driver is cursing freely. He takes a crowbar to their last packing crate, but it is just like the others, the nails loose and the palm fibers discarded. And within is not what they've already ceased to hope for, not the silver service or the 10 rolled tapestries, not the bank records or their grandmother's bridal dress, not the 9 gold bricks they have always joked about needing one day, not the lead crystal, not the children's uniforms purchased for a school which last night they had watched burning like a sacrifice, not the button accordion the boy was struggling to master under his mother's tutelage, not the etching of the small packet ship from which their ancestors alighted here 2 centuries ago, not the house diary, that long black book of their lives. Only sand, bags of river sand, still wet, cleverly arranged. In hindsight, the theft is no mystery. The girl, Davka, easily follows what the grown-ups are saying. The security checkpoint, that dithering commandant, the tent he marched us into, weren't suspicious that room, the wall thin shut, our future snatched like a purse. G-Sub 9, Davka is a ball 15. They'll have the tickets as their mother nods, the same passive nod his wife often is, have converged like mirrors after long years of love. Have the, he says, have the medical bag. The house is ours, no matter how long we're aboard. The law is perfectly clear. The law is burning. I know that. Father looks at the Mr. Juto protecting us, says. He'll have my letter in hand. We're not going to starve. Second from the steamer's horn. The girl and I exchange a look. This is the face of the monster. This is how exile begins. What is left to them? A duffel each for the children. Fruit plucked from their own trees at the last possible instant by lamplight. Mangoes, rose apples, rambutan. 4 white sweaters purchased yesterday. 2 pounds of tea from the farm beyond the mountain. Their mother's journal, their father's bag of scalpels and pills. In the girl's pocket, a folding knife with 14 implements. In the boy's hands, the morphocular telescope. This last item is rare and curious. Brass body wrapped in sealskin, 3 cylinders and 4 thick lenses, and a color wheel of transposable filters. Difficult to operate, dizzying to use. An ancient thing and beautiful. Their father had scolded the boy for playing with it in secret, while 100 other treasures were sealed in the crates. Now the morphocular telescope is all they have left. Jisan feels his sister's stare. Davka is beckoning at the scope. Give, she whispers. Hurry! Jisan shakes his head. She snatches. He jumps out of reach. I'm better at it than you, she whispers. It is an old habit, that whisper, for between them the morphocular is a kind of secret, a pact. What can you see with it? They'd asked their mother years ago. Nothing much nothing much with that substitute eyepiece, she'd lamented. It's just a spyglass now. Priceless, but a toy. And with the original eyepiece? Oh, the original. Ships at 50 miles, sea serpents, the rainbows locked in storm clouds, the deep veins in your flesh. But mother will never touch the morphocular herself, never demonstrate, and father says he lacks the gift. The children do not press, for in fact they see all their mother's recollected wonders and more through the device, new eyepiece notwithstanding. Somehow they know better than to speak of it. Davka snatches again. Jisun turns his shoulder, moves away. It is not like him to defy his sister, but Davka has been angry for a week, and especially sharp this morning. Get dressed, stop sniveling. Do you think the world's turning for you? In fact, all she wants is to hold him. It's not his fault. Last week, Jisun had slept like an angel through their parents' midnight coffee with the solicitor, that round, lisping man with eyes like raisins on a pie, who kept saying, Jisun, leave it all to Jisun, every last thing you own. We might not be going anywhere, father had protested. We've not lost hope. Hope as you please, doctor, but leave the boy your estate. Davka had listened through the signing, the stamping, the handshake at the door. When would they decide that Jisun was old enough to know? All yours one day and not a scrap for your sister. Take care of her, maybe. There's a decent young man. Now, of course, it is a tasteless joke. One day little Jisun will inherit nothing. Old clothes and a medical bag. A worthless deed to a ruin across the sea. Mother's composure breaks when the driver tries to return his pay. She embraces him. Father pumps his hand. Not on your life, my dear fellow. Only spend it, spend it. Tomorrow it might not buy a thing. Jisun, at a distance, aims the morphocular back the way they have come. The road unspools. There is the checkpoint, the muddy river, the churchyard where his parents married, the yard of slate stones where their ancestors sleep, the gates of the provincial hospital, the somewhat grander gates of their home. A twist of the cylinders. He is through the iron bars. The mango tree is laden. The bats will feast, or the rebels, or the flames. Davka has left a book on the windowsill. Her father has left his gardening shoes. Rugged lilacs, turquoise bees, and something falling over everything, black feathers or a dry black snow. Another twist. It is ash that is falling, a silent rain from the not-so-distant front, settling on the whorls of the frangipani tree, melting on the marble stairs. The third horn blast. The crowd is moving. Davka tugs at his arm. Put the scope away, says his mother, but he cannot obey her, cannot turn without a last reclamation. By the side door, his cat sits untroubled in the smutty rain, tail curled about her forepaws, waiting for her morning milk. That's part one. Part two, focal plane. The war pursues them out to sea. What they took for a matter of local jealousies and a few contested hills turns out to be part of a cataclysm, one square on the game board where faceless giants squabble over the world. Jisun busies himself with games of his own when talk turns to fleets and supply lines, trenches, bayonets. Davka worries about his sanity, deeply and with little reason. Perhaps this is all her purpose. Perhaps this is what elder sisters are for. They share a bunk in the tidy cabin. There are nights when he suddenly gasps and clutches her, eyes open but still asleep, and she is chilled to imagine where his mind has gone, some refracted world, some weird, distorted kingdom that entrances and appalls. Then dawn breaks and life crumbles into prose. The world is one, war is everywhere. The tinned milk is rationed, mother drinks her tea black. The ship's company divides along bewildering fault lines. The bearded Westerners refuse to eat with those from the clean-shaven East. The business passengers despise the captain. The captain mutters his suspicions of the engine crew. Yet they all bring their ailments to her father, paying for treatment with extra soap, extra drinking water, blankets against the cold. War doesn't matter, Father tells the children. The land we're making for is neutral, enlightened. You will come to love it. Mr. Kajuto is the kindest man I've ever known. Davka tries to be comforted. She lets a cabin boy teach her to fish and to use the scaler on her folding knife. In ports of call, she mingles with the villagers who come aboard hawking anything and everything, cane liquor and palm nuts, ruby geckos and hyacinth macaws, sea urchins, spiny lobsters, speckled eggs pilfered from the shorebirds' nests. She counts dolphins, keeps a journal. One evening, blushing and stammering, the boy gives her a pearl. After dinner, she hides it among her underthings, tied up in a kerchief. But somehow, without so much as glancing at her, Jisan knows, crouching in a corner, wearing that grin that meant he was wise to you and might wield your secret like an axe. Oh, but she hates him, the small, smelly gargoyle, turning the color wheel on the morphocular with an insolent click, snap, click, until Mother cannot take it, rises from her chair and confiscates the telescope, and delivers her favorite, a rare rebuke. God in heaven, Jisan, you're old enough not to treat this like a toy. A moment's carelessness, a little swallowed start, and everything. Dico will still not have died. I think, says behind his muffled newspaper. Used to the where I am at the moment. What a pretty glass. What will you tell your own children? That broke it, Duff. Has the trouble. I did break it. The eyepiece with special something cedar oil. That's never be right. Now, specifically, you don't because the father use it at all. The pictures, advantages. Davka screamed. Do you know what's extraordinary about glass? Papa, no, I don't want glass is an illusion. A plate pour time. It's a solid. It's in motion, constantly flowing. The very cathedral.
Robert, you're a little intermittent, your audio, so.
Uh-oh. All right.
Oh, I have arrangements. Sorry, it's a little broken up.
Okay. Well, I'm going to turn off the headphones and try going with the other.
Yeah, I think you'd be better try it. Yeah. Well, now it's smooth now, but for the past 5 minutes, let's give it a shot.
Huh.
Sorry.
Okay, I'll turn them off. That's okay.
Thanks.
Well, I want people to hear me. That's definitely the goal. Let's just.
Yeah, I think we're just going to go with the laptop mic for now.
Yeah. Actually, now that you, your audio got a little shaky on me there when you were speaking. Sound.
That's Bluetooth.
Okay, I have switched. How is that?
Yeah, that's definitely better. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right, I'll just go back a couple sentences then. Do you know what's extraordinary about glass? Says the father. Oh God, Papa, no, and I don't want. Glass is an illusion, says the man of science. A trick played on our poor sense of time. We think it's a solid, but in fact it's in motion, constantly flowing. The very windows in a cathedral will one day stand empty, their glazing puddled on the floor. You're showing off because you're jealous, says Daga. She sounds not much good with the scope, but you're hopeless. You can't make it do a thing. Make it? Three heads turn to Mother, whose hands are shaking in her lap. Davka's ears are ringing. She cannot recall the last time Mother shouted. In her sleep that night, the girl strays into a hall of mirrors. Everywhere she turns are beckoning forms, one's infinite and witless distance. Eyes acute. Why won't she step forward? Why won't she come back? She disappears. I cannot ask her. How can one be expected to move both forward and back? The ship is the cut. This happens sometimes on all these, perhaps, or the mouth of her face. Slides the buck into her coat, ocular from her mother's nightstand, slips out of the cabin and across the deck. It is the few sailors move like phantoms. The very spine of the heavens reaches down to the sea. Dog crouches by the and wait for sunrise. But they arrived, some made sympathetic or amused approach her to retreat. Share whale when he senses he whispers words without she could vanish with him. There will be more ports of call. But what a terrible thought. It would be frightful. She doesn't want such a thing. But why not see it? Why not know what could have been? When the dawn breaks, the boy finds her standing, looking at him through a curious instrument, the lips that have held him spellbound gaping open in surprise. Is she blushing? Can that thing pierce his clothes? No, it's worse. She has devoured him. All it pierces is his heart. He stumbles away, and the girl stands there stricken, his life from infancy to old age thrust upon her, never to marry, never to prosper, barefoot now and barefoot at 70. What a heartless world, and how much worse the hall of mirrors when there are no other figures, when you walk it alone. Davka trembles, men are staring. She has sinned. What refuge does she have but the morphocular itself? She hides behind it, aims it north at no one, and as always it coughs up a world. Landfall, their destination, a city of icy buildings, interchangeable streets, a frowning city imprisoned in a horseshoe bay, stark ruins on one left, on the other a lamp that pulses in the fog, a waterfront piers snaggled to the board, the people disembark. It's a blur. She's perplexed. Why that sunset alone? Then she realizes the blur is spread to the passengers as they file landward along the pier. In some, she realizes that it spins the color wheel, the placement. No use. Over the faces of the passengers, only a smudge. Number 3, temperature. The city is the moon, says Mr. Kaduka. There, from the shadows of the carriage across from the TV. Right now, see black doorways, men adrift. But there is also the city of festivals and feast days, libraries, amphitheaters, magnolias lining the market square, swans in the park of the Evangels, black and regal. Every year the swans return, splashing down in the reflecting pool, fighting, feeding, choosing mates, nesting in the corner reserved for them. Nothing is hopeless while such cycles endure. The faces of the children, depleted, blank, appear and vanish with the streetlights. Kijuto clears his throat. My little niece is frightened of the swans. They can be quite aggressive. But she always begs to go and see them. I'll introduce you. She's the same age as Yuji-san. They thank him in unison. Kijuto gives them a helpless smile. They can't really hear him yet. The doctor and his wife have taught them courtesy, and that is something to cling to, something of their own. But courtesy is also a mask. What can they be thinking? What part of them can feel? Ji-sun holds the morphocular propped on his knee, upright like a club. Suddenly he twists around to kneel on the carriage seat. The rear window is leaded glass, and through its mud-flecked oval he has a final glimpse of a steamer, once hated as the instrument of exile, now cherished as a last link with home. See that ship? That's the proof. My world existed. We may be here in this roaring darkness, but we were also there, all of us. We had orchids and ginger flowers, a cat that dozed in the garden, lazy buzzards, a clock that told the seasons in the shape of the moon, and parents, and a kettle always wailing on the stovetop. The carriage turns. The ship is gone. The Kijuto man is watching him in silence, rugged hands gripping his knees. It was fortunate, this gray-templed scientist, finding them so swiftly. But then they must have been eye-catching. 2 children marooned on the quay beside a sea chest. The girl clutching a medical bag and the boy a curious spyglass. More numb than fearful. Newly orphaned. More numb than fearful. newly orphaned by the typhus that struck late in the voyage and carried off 87 souls. When his parents died, Jisun had not felt it correctly. His mind went wandering. He ached, but a part of him floated free above the vessel, uncaring, a heartless little ghost. He might never have returned to himself but for the ceremony on the top deck, the white forms lined up on planks, hints of knees and breasts and noses under the bed sheets, the captain's prayer and the last salute, a bullet fired at God for every death. The planks tipped and the sheets gave up the bodies, no argument. They called it burial at sea. Then he did cry, soundless, furious. This is why Mother quit using the telescope. This is the serpent she glimpsed. After the deaths, they had more room in the cabin. The man assigned to watch over them slept in the passage for fear of the disease. His sister cried day and night, but the boy just stared at the ceiling. And though the room was stuffy, he ached with cold. Nothing could warm him. It was as though he were naked, or the windows shattered, or a wall peeled back, or his skin. The carriage stops. Dumplings for dinner, says Mr. Kajuto. These are the best in the city. Wait here and I'll fetch them. Do you like chicken or pork? We like all sorts of dumplings, sir, says Davka. The boy nods slowly. Kajuto ducks out of the carriage and is swallowed by the night. Jisan looks at his sister. He could kick her sometimes. He's not sure what dumplings are, but he knows they've never had any, chicken or pork or potting soil, in their lives. What are you doing? Asks Davka, for he is reaching across her for the carriage door. Fresh air, he says. She cracks the door open but keeps a grip on the handle. She has caught him out, heard the twitchy something in his voice. Put down the morphocular, Jisan. He shakes his head. We shouldn't have it. No one should. They wanted us to have it, says Davka. Besides, it's the most valuable thing we own. It killed them, he says. Jisan, the typhus killed them. Don't you go crazy on me. In the other world, there was no typhus. Of course there was, she says. Daddy talked about it, a few cases each year. Not that world, not home, he says. I mean the world before the morphocular. Don't you know how it works? We raise it to our eye and twist and focus, but it's our world that changes so fast we can't feel a thing. And the change is forever. We lower the scope and the old world's gone. That's not true. In the other world, they're still alive, Davka. Stop it, she says. There's just this one world, Gigi, and we have to live in it now. Fine, he says, let's live. I'm going to smash it in the street. She bars the door with her body. The fight is on. Give me the scope if you don't want it. Let me out, let me out. Sit down, don't be a coward. You pig, he screams, kicking savagely at her. It's not right. It could get worse. We haven't lost everything. I still have you. Okay, here's the last part I'll read. It's called Objective Lens. And I guess, Amy, you'll wave at me if there's any more sound trouble, right? Okay, part 4, Objective Lens. These stream of consciousness things take a lot of breath. Objective Lens. What is there to say about summer, about happiness? It is here and gone too swiftly, dewdrops on a web. As Davka climbs the stairs to the ruined temple overlooking the city, Jisan tunes his new accordion behind the amphitheater. Both basking in the light of late afternoon, both eager for the night. Around Davka, the cliff swallows are flitting, and the breeze is cool. At her back, the city sprawls like a banquet. Under her smart leather shoes, the blue flagstones flow by like the frames of the moving pictures her lover projects on the garden wall for the local children. Blazing images of elsewhere. Parades and coronations. Elephants, great spotted cats. Camel trains vanishing into deserts. A steam engine emerging fearless from the snow. Like everyone, Davka is entranced by this new magic, film, the stour of endless worlds. It hardly compares with the morphocular telescope, for what can film show you but the already happened, the dead event, a flag thrust cockeyed in the riverbank as the raft sweeps helplessly by. But such flags! Davka believes that she and her lover will capture them all one day, board the trains, ride the elephants, cheer with the mob when the crown prince ascends to the throne, laugh secretly at her adopted land's adoration of that figurehead still in his teens, raise their own children, grow old together in a warm wooden house. The sun climbs and Davka climbs. The cracked eggshell of the temple dome looms nearer. The path winds among statues that the years have rendered anonymous. Is that cherub or chicken, maiden or man? Is that stone torso arched in ecstasy or pain? Oh, let it be ecstasy. The cry released from 1,000 lips as Jisan and his fellow players take the stage in the Park of the Evangels. The roar of joy without suffering, sex without duplicity, children ignorant of war. Davka gains the summit, and there is Mr. Kijuto, older now but beaming, waving with the cane he only leans on when he must, arm in arm with beautiful Bilakri, her eyes all mischief as she looks Davka up and down. I thought you were here to paint, she says, almost rudely. Sketches first, says Davka, lifting the pad clenched in her hand. But I've made the sketch already. On the first landing, there was this boy in a flannel shirt. I just had to. His eyes. Look at her, uncle, Bilakri interrupts, sweating like a farmhand. Will you ride down with us at least, you stubborn girl? Kijuto pads up to her, bends stiffly to kiss her cheek. That scarf, he says, pausing to touch the red sash about her neck. Raw silk, very beautiful. It's from Ariath, says Davka a little nervously. Ariath is the rival country, their bellicose neighbor across the straits. A very civilized enemy. Oh, sorry. Trading with the enemy, says Bilakri, mock severe. A very civilized enemy, says Kijuto. Your aunt and I thought of moving there before things grew so tense. Davka, won't you come and eat with us? You can't paint all the time. She tries, says Bilakri. That's what these artists do, you know. They neglect their basic needs. Davka looks away, grinning helplessly. Bilakri cannot utter a word without arousing her. They both know it. Surely her uncle knows it, but wasn't he ever a master of silence when silence was required? He's all in favor, you know, Bilakri had assured her weeks before. It surprised him a little, that's all. He thought I'd end up with your brother. But so what? Everyone did. Even I did till you sorted me out. And Uncle's mad about you. Besotted. I'd be jealous if I didn't have you in the palm of my hand. Frequently. Davka had turned crimson. How can she say such things, straight-faced, aloud? How is it possible to love anyone as deliriously as she loves this laughing girl? But she is also frightened of Bilakri, the perfection of her cheekbones, her hair, the fall of one curl like a fishhook across her eye. How did it go, that song of her mother's? Love alights on the shoulder but can't lend us its wings. Will you abandon me? Will you leave me thirsting for the sky? Jisan plays his own version of the tune, high and wild and forlorn and free, his accordion keening and the fiddler possessed, and the broad, beautiful singer hurling the lyric to the crowd on her voice of silver, tears of joy in her eyes as she catches Jisan's own. Where do you find the music, you secretive sly charmer? Where do you get the stories and the sounds? And if the answer is itself a secret, a magic thing that fell into a child's hands, half a world away, and serves him still? If he never did smash it, but goes to it for vision and courage like a drunkard to the flask, surely he'll be pardoned. He has no venal motives. He doesn't seek the winner of the horse race, the unplundered shipwrecks, veins of gold in the earth. He's mined the world for music, that's all. Music veiled by distance, in the past, in the future, in the heart truth the scope lays bare. And if it has brought him some comfort, a little adoration even, well, surely he's paid for it. You don't drink from that cup without burning your lips. The memory's too sharp, and what you've lost too enormous. Not just parents, but a wholeness of heart the exile never recaptures, no matter who he sleeps with, no matter how fast he plays. I've swallowed fire, he thinks. I've stuck a telescopic straw into this town and drunk its blood. As far up on the hilltop, Bilakri squeezes Davka's hand, and old Kijuto turns his failing eyes to the east. Is it clear today? Can you see the volcano? The women assure him they can. It's right there beyond the olive groves and the vineyards, a cone perfect as a child's drawing, but capped as always with a plume of smoke. I want to see it erupt, said Bilakri. No, you don't, cried Davka and Kijuto together, suddenly, immigrants again. You're terribly mean, both of you, Bilakri scolds. You've seen earthquakes, warships, revolution. Things have happened to you, real things, not just notions and make-believe, moving pictures on a wall. Look at the fog lamp, says Cajuto severely, waving his cane at the cliffs across the Horseshoe Bay. The lamp has yet to be turned on, but neither woman tells him. It's very pretty, says his niece. Pretty is not its purpose, he says. The lamp warns boats off the sandbars. When I was 19, it failed in a late squall, and a pleasure boat was wrecked. 3 couples, 4 children. We were all called out to search for survivors. Well, there you are, says Balakri, triumphant. The real world. Cajuto shakes his head. They washed ashore when the tide receded, he says. Miles away, the gulls led us to the spot. There's a memorial stone up near the fog lamp I used to take my students. For years I could recite the victims' names. The real world will find you, Billy. Don't hurry it. You're still young. But for how much longer, cries Balakri, mawkish, only half believing in her woes. I could arrange to have you kidnapped, says Davka. Oh, what a mistake. Balakri's dark eyes lift and melt her. Yes, please, Davka. And the descent by funicular has never been so slow, nor the drive through the city, crowded visitors to the music festival. Does Kyuto sense how breathless they both are, seated across from him? Is that her heart or Jisan's drummer, the racing life of the beat that is the heart's word and the song at once, the cry of thanks to the universe, sweat on Jisun's brow and blissful pain in his fingers, the accordion drawing racehorse breaths, and the singer's arms flung wide to embrace it all, voluptuous youth and brilliant sunset, musical flight and the crowd's adoration. Here is Kajuto's home at last, the jangling keys, the old eyes seeking Davka over his shoulder. You'll want to shower off that dust, won't you? Light the boiler for her, Billy. And with the speed of dream, Balakri leads her down the hall and into the bath chamber. Davka closes the door, and in the same instant her eyes, Balakri's hands are warm and fearless. This is why the torso arches. 1,000 years in this instant, ecstasy and affirmation. Life, life, life. All right, I guess I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about the audio. I hope people
Yeah, I think it was the internet connection. Unfortunately, that's always difficult to, to handle.
Yeah.
But let's
Did
see.
it get scratchy again?
Yeah, on and off, but that's life. But I think we got most of it.
Okay.
So let's start easy. Why do you think this took you 8 years to write? Or is that a hard question to start with?
I have a few theories. I'm kind of a tone fanatic. I was writing giant books under deadline, which is what I should have been spending all my time on, I guess. And really, because the ending just eluded me. I guess it may have been easy to tell, except for the first couple of sections, it jumps forward pretty drastically with the years. And, not to give too much of a spoiler, but it takes them pretty late into their lives. And I just couldn't get the ending right. I wanted it to do certain things, and I guess I was willing to wait. I also, I showed it to a couple of beta readers, and they kind of went, "What?" That may have discouraged me for a little while, or maybe prompted me to do hard rewrites, or a little of both. But I guess I was not optimistic for it, to be honest. I didn't seem like there was that much rush to get it done, and then bang, sent it to Clarkesworld. Hadn't sent it anywhere else, and yes, he took it right away. So sometimes you get lucky.
I mean, one of the things is I know you sent me some notes, and we will be talking about your travel experiences. But one of the things, if I remember when you read from Sidewinders, and if I remember correctly, that was about the section you read was about an army on the move. So the travel there is about armies moving, whereas this story, if I interpreted it correctly, was more of a diaspora kind of story and more about refugees, people who are fleeing oppression and not people who are frankly out there making it. And what kind of inspired that shift in perspective?
Well, I mean the germ of the story has, some connections. I guess all these, the kids, the parents, and Bilakri, Davka's lover, who comes in, even Mr. Kajuto and a couple of other people who are going to take the stage. They all have fragments of people that I've known in them. It's very refracted. It's very changed. But sometimes when I sit back, I can see them in a scene or a scenelet. So I think I was dreaming of these sort of recombined friends a bit, and even family. And so it wasn't a new thing. It was something that had been teasing me as long as the idea for the Fire Sacraments had been. I just, I guess at that moment when I took a breather, well, it was actually before the Fire Sacraments that I started it. So it's taking a breather from the last Chathrand book probably, but it was something that had been clamoring for attention for a while. But yeah, I care about exile. I mean, I think that there's things in my own life that have sort of, I've certainly never been in exile in any way, shape, or form. That would be grandiose indeed. But I think I have a strange relationship to belonging. In one sense, I'm very rooted. I've had a stable family, and at least I've kind of had two hometowns, a town for my childhood and a town for my adolescence, but they were very stable besides that one move. But then it seemed like many of my friends and eventually my partner and other romantic partners before her were all sort of wandering souls, and that got under my skin a bit. Some of them never were going home, and I just began thinking about that more and more. And then and I traveled, and when I was very, very far away from home, like Argentina, Indonesia, Colombia, Argentina more than any, which may be why I wrote my first novel set there. But in those places, I felt like I could, do what Davka sort of has that momentary fantasy about doing, of just stepping off the boat and disappearing. And it was deeply unsettling, that sense that just take, a 10-minute set of actions, and you're going to, by necessity, become a different person. If I said, I'm not coming back from Argentina, assuming that I could have pulled that off, who would I have become? So it was always, percolating. It's a long answer, I guess. But.
No, I think that's interesting. I mean, do you want to talk more about your travels, which honestly sound really exciting, and other ways that they've fed into your work?
A little, sure. Many of them now were long ago. And the most recent really big thing was Indonesia in 2014 through 2014 through 2016, off and on. I was there for about a year and a half total, and that was incredible. But it started with a obsession with Latin America, and especially the neotropics, the tropical part of this hemisphere. And I went to a program to study tropical conservation and social justice at the University of Florida. It was called the Tropical Conservation and Development Program, and it ended up putting me in Argentina. It was amazing, and I was working with park rangers who live in the most remote parts of Argentina. So I was off way, way, way in the back of beyond again and again and again, and it was expensive and hard to do, and involved, like, back then, occasional flights within Argentina, but usually like 15 to 25-hour bus rides, because those were cheaper. And when you're heading off, like, to La Pampa or off to Rio Negro province in the middle of the night through dark pampas, it just, and again, it's a spur to the imagination, and it was lonely and amazing, and you'd wake up in a landscape you'd never seen before. What more could a writer ever ask for? And it kind of got under my skin. And my partner Kiran, she's from India, but she worked in Latin America. She still works in Colombia, and I went with her to live in Colombia, and that was amazing in another way. It was in '95, and I had to stick to the cities a lot because of the violence at that time. It was so extreme, and there was a lot of kidnapping, but still incredible. journeys in Mexico and Guatemala, where I learned Spanish. Some wonderful things in Europe, and then Indonesia, which was mind blowing, and also other parts of Southeast Asia. India several times with Kiran, and Cambodia, and so on. And yeah, I was often working and trying to give back, but I won't fool myself. It was privilege, pure and simple, to do that. So sometimes I was a tag along spouse. Sometimes I was, going there mostly for my own professional reasons. But it was wonderful.
But it sounds like it's balanced between remote landscapes and cities, because I mean, this story in particular feels very city based, which is, I think, a different kind of experience.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, except for Argentina, the time outside the cities was unfortunately sort of the exception. Well, okay, Mexico as well, but yeah, work was in the city usually, especially Kiran's and Indonesia was the most urban thing I have ever experienced in my life. I mean, we were in roughly speaking Greater Jakarta, and wow, I mean, the trips we made to India felt like going to a spacious open land. By comparison, it was so crowded. The airport was 45 miles away with a 10-lane highway going in each direction, and it could take 6 hours. The traffic was so bad.
Well, I think we have
an amazing experience.
I think we have a remote landscape question. Joseph R. Kennedy asks, can I assume that Sidewinder is a nod to the snake because it's a desert tale? And did you have to research life and travel in a desert, or does the fantasy take over?
Oh, well, yes, it's definitely a nod to the snake. And it's a little apocryphal because I attribute some, they now are pretty sure that the Sidewinder sidewinds to keep more of its body off the scalding sands and not as a evasive maneuver. But I also just fancifully thought might make it a little harder for a bird of prey to land on the thing, or any other predator that's foolish enough to try to eat a rattlesnake. But and so that becomes, at least this is the belief of a lot of the people about Sidewinders. They may or may not be right, but they attribute that same quality to the brothers. That the brothers, my two protagonists, just get out of every scrape under the sun, and pretty soon people are shaking their heads because they're this close to death so many times that and they're actually waiting for the other shoe to drop. They're waiting for their charm to break. But yes, I did a lot of desert research, lots and lots and lots. Just like in the first series that was set aboard a ship, I did naval research and seafaring research, and this time, I did a lot of desert research, and went to the arid lands that I could, but I have never been to the Sahara. I've never been to one of the great deserts on Earth, so I had to rely on talking to people that had, and lots of reading.
Yeah, I spent 5 minutes in the Negev when I visited Israel when I was a kid, and that was a thing. I mean, that's when I discovered that you can actually see the Milky Way. I thought it was a cloud, and I was like, oh, there's a reason why they call it the Milky Way.
Yeah, I've been in some arid places enough in the middle of the night and away from light pollution, and it's something else in the desert. I understand.
And wow, I think that looked like, speaking of which, that looked like a bombisha to me, since I know you said you went to Argentina.
Very.
That's a bombisha for mate.
Mate, yeah. Do you drink mate? We got a bomb some, Amy.
I've got Argentinian friends.
Oh, it's the best.
Yes.
The buzz is so different from coffee. You drink it, and then like your hunger goes away, and you feel like you've got enough energy to march 20 miles, and then you don't sleep all night.
Well, I think it's less about that and more about the social aspects of it. It's one of those things which is not so wise to do in these pandemic times. It's about sharing. You pour and you share.
And you use that same straw.
And it's very.
I cannot tell you how many people did that with in Argentina, and it's very, at least there. I hope I'm sure it's changed quite a bit since the 90s when I was there, but it's very distancing if you say no. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
no, like old guys on buses in the middle of the night, hey, Thomas, and you do, or they, give you the look. So,
it is
yeah.
a nice thing, and it's one of
Mm.
those things like making, green tea. You absolutely have to get the water, temperature right and
Exactly right.
pour it in the
Yeah.
right
Mm.
way, or it's not,
Mm.
it's gonna taste like somebody, you know, scraped up the dry leaves on your lawn if you don't get it right.
Yeah. Or old cigarette butts in a glass of water. Yeah, that's true. But oh, what a wonderful thing! Now you're making me nostalgic. I haven't had it in a while. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I haven't had it in a year. The last time I visited my friend, she does it every morning with her husband. They sit out on their porch
Mm.
in California and they drink mate. They start every morning that way. It's nice.
Yeah, and people travel with their thermoses full of water at just the right temperature. So,
So I also wanted to go back to this since you were talking about your travels and your professional travels. So what does it mean to be an international development consultant?
that falls into the category of if it's going to go on your resume, why undersell it? I mean, there's not a better term that I've come across, but I always flinch a little bit because that sounds so grandiose. But it's basically consultant. Like in other senses of consultant, I've been paid to do a bunch of different things. I've been paid to research climate policy for the global environmental facility that distributes funds around the world to try to mitigate carbon emissions through forest conservation and reducing land degradation. Yeah, consulting. What else are you going to call something like that? I've done lots and lots of editing, and then the editing morphs into a little bit of writing, and so you can call yourself editor/writer. You can call yourself consultant. Consultant just it's a catch-all term, I guess. But
But it
but it
sounds
sounds better. Yeah, you
impressive.
could say gopher. It wouldn't be any less accurate. But dog's body. You could say that. But you know, I've
That's
I've usually it's been I've been the part-time worker, um, so that I could keep writing fiction most of the time. And when we've traveled together, it's usually because Kiran's writing her PhD, or Kiran had the primary job with the institute in Indonesia, and I started working for them a little bit later. Um, so
Well, that makes sense. It does,
mm.
I'm the only one who ever uses the word dog's body around here. I always say that that's what I do for this series. I pitch in
Mm.
for whenever they need me.
Well, you can be a consultant too. So,
That's my freelance term too, but in my case, it's mostly about talking about audiobooks and,
mm.
getting audiobooks for people. It's not about, trying to make the world a better place, which, let's face it, we could really use.
Yeah, I mean, I don't travel as much anymore. Financially, it's harder now, but I also just feel like if I can't have some reason to justify the carbon, it's a lot harder than it used to be. I mean, back in the 90s, yeah, we were thinking about it, but we weren't thinking about it, like we should have been, or as intensely as we are now. And over those years, I saw a lot of people who just like the sort of international development lifestyle. I mean, and a lot of fantastic, wonderful people doing essential, incredible work. I should start with that. But there's also just a sense that some of these people will live forever in motion, and I think um, it becomes a lifestyle preference too. I'm going to go have another meeting in Istanbul. Yeah, let's do it. And without a thought. And now I just feel like I really have to say, is this just for me, really? And just to see my friends, and just because I like being cosmopolitan, or is it actually going to result in something that the world needs now? And this is becoming a harder and harder question. So
Maybe the development we need is, right here.
yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Hmm.
I think we're becoming more like other parts of the world in ways that perhaps we were not expecting.
Yeah, I mean, and so many other countries have been ahead of us in so many ways, not richer than us usually, few of those, but um, we just learn so much from other countries if we were willing to learn much of anything.
So do you think that this change in perspective is going to affect how you're going to be writing in the future? Or?
Well, I mean, how in terms of that, I'll probably be home a lot more in that sense. And I don't want to completely stop traveling, but I'm thinking, not trips all the time, but one carefully planned trip where I stay longer, maybe. So that I don't have 2 flights, but just 1, or 3 flights get reduced to 1. But yeah, I mean, I expect it also will mean that to some degree, I won't have the same inflow of unbelievable, just this. I'll never get to use all the thoughts and impressions that have already come my way from travel. And there's just no way. Usually, it's years after I'm in a place that I start seeing any of it in one of my books. Anyway, it has to sort of compost a while, but before I can turn it into fiction, it seems. I don't just have an experience and fictionalize it. It changes into something else before it really feels like it's matured, I guess. But that's okay too, because I have a novel set in my hometown of Charlottesville, Virginia, that I really want to write, and another book in the Chathrand series that I really want to write, and this this last book in the Fire Sacraments, which is far from over. So those 3 right there will keep me busy for quite a long time. So it's not anything I have to worry about for a while.
Do you
If
have
anything, I'm wondering what it's going to be like to write a story set in this world again, because it's been so long since I've done that. So.
Do you have a priority order for how you want to arrange all that, or you don't know quite yet?
Well, the last book in the Fire Sacraments definitely comes first, because
That's what I figured.
Yeah, it's not nice to make people wait longer than they have to, and I want to find out how the story ends. I never know until I've written it.
Oh, you're a pantser.
I'm a pantser. Yeah, I mean, I plan like crazy, and then I gleefully drive off the map that I've made. So, or drive off the road and go cross country. Happens every time. I have to plan. I plan and plan and plan and plan, and drive off the road because I find a shortcut that's more interesting. A nice bouncy gravel road over the ridge instead of a nice paved one around the bottom of the ridge. So.
I wonder if that affects why you seem to prefer a long form, because it gives you more freedom to do that. Whereas if you had to keep it really tight and stop at the end of 10 or 20 pages, then you couldn't drive all over the road and go on the interesting tangents.
Yeah, I mean, another way to say that is that writing short stories are freaking hard. I stand in awe of the elegance that people pull off. I'm like building big chunky pieces of furniture compared to watchmakers when I'm writing these epic fantasies. And I try very hard, which is why I'm slow, to be attentive to the language in the big books too. But I'm obsessive about it. But with a short story, you don't just have to have beautifully composed paragraphs, but you have to fit them together in an efficient, tight, perfect crystal. And that is amazing when you see how well people do it. Not a word wasted.
I mean, I used to work on children's books. I started in science fiction, and then I worked on picture books for a few years. And I always think in some ways that's harder, because if you only have a few sentences on the page, then they better be the best sentences possible.
You can't just
a tough one.
meander.
Everybody thinks that that's easier, and I don't think so. I mean, goodness knows the effort to put out 800 pages is incredible. But putting out a
It's a
32-page
different
book,
thing.
it's a different kind of labor. I mean, I wonder if that also affected your 8 years in terms of getting a novella out, because it is a different kind of labor.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like I said, a given page of that Vanishing Point I was reading from, I could have spent 6 months on a couple of pages, let's say, and I'm sure I have. When you add it all up. Now, not working on it every day, but always there. Yeah, it's insane, isn't it, to do this to ourselves? What are we doing with our lives? I wouldn't want to be doing anything else.
Do you think you'll journey again to doing short fiction, or is that not?
Oh yeah, no, I totally want to. Yeah, and it's another thing. I'm looking forward to writing Siege, which is the last book in it. It's Master Assassins, the first one, then Sidewinders, which, by the way, has a Yes album for a cover.
It does kind of.
I love this cover. Yes, thank you. There it is. I absolutely, totally adore that crazy cover. And yes, that thing is in the book. That is the Tower of the Night Queen. I'll have you know. But
See,
what
but
was
see,
I?
now I'm gonna have prog, but now I'm gonna have prog rock in my head, when I read your work.
Okay.
And let's see, Jim is coming on to tell us that we're probably gonna be wrapping up soon, I think. And
Or that you're out of celery.
that too. So let's see. I'm going to
Reading
wrap
the
up
comment
with
section.
2 short questions, unless anybody else wants to contribute. And one is my stupid question: what does VS stand for? If you're going to sit there and have extra middle names, you're going to have to
Yeah.
add.
Well, it really is my middle name, but I guess self-fictionalization runs in my family. VS is von Stein, but if you go back a few generations, we were Steins. We were Jews, and the Steins came over to Ellis Island, and standing in the long line, the family story goes, somebody just got tickled with the idea of messing with his own name or his family name, and they had an argument about it, and people said, "Oh, we should just not let anybody know we're Jews. We should mess with them. People hate Jews here, don't they? Quick, quick! There's only 4 more people ahead of us. What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" And they put a von, VON, in front of Stein, which is nuts, but so we are the von Steins. My little
See, I think
nephew and I are.
I think we just lost an umlaut in our name.
What's that? You lost an umlaut?
I don't know if you see
Over the
the liquor bottle sticks one on top of the A,
oh
but I don't,
yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't know.
Uh-huh.
But that's so funny. That's like a great immigrant story.
And apparently the Hungarians on the other side of the family did something like that too. They were
We're
like,
Oh, that means we must be related because I'm Hungarian on my other
I
side.
remember, yes.
We have a weird last name. We have a weird last name on the other side that no one can spell.
Yeah, we're probably like second cousins and just don't know it.
I claim all Hungarian Jews as my relatives, so that's a thing. And then let's see, my final fun question before Jim kicks us out. What are you reading right now?
Well, I was telling you last night, I read Skyward Inn most recently. I just finished it and I'm totally nuts about it, but I got the name of the author wrong. So it's Alia. I'm just going to pull it up here because everybody should read this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful book. Skyward Inn. Alia Whiteley. She's British, and I just was blown away. Beautiful, beautiful writing. Exquisite first contact story. First and last, I think one can say without giving away too much. And as I got to the end of that book, I realized she just taught me that more is possible about communicating the strangeness of alien contact than I thought could be done. I realized, I've thought for years about what it'd be like to, because I haven't really done this yet, except in some juvenilia that I never finished, but I've never actually written a piece of science fiction to counter a directly alien. But I do remember my experience with, I thought, it's two different one. We respond to that. Gosh, she did just working with lack of comprehension and ability to see the person who's faced with say, oh no, it's this, and great. It's that's what I said there.
Well, I think this is probably a good time to stop, especially because unfortunately you're breaking up again, Robert.
Oh,
I don't,
on Wave. That's what I read before. So beautiful.
but
Sorry.
anyway,
Waking up?
yeah, a
Oh
little bit. Yeah,
no.
unfortunately, which is too bad because you were clearly very passionate about it, and I
Yeah,
do
it must be
think a
why.
really good first contact story is super valuable. I don't know. I think I remember reading The Sparrow, and that stuck with me forever for bad first contact stories, or at least in terms of misinterpreting first contact, which I think is something happens, right here on Earth, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
anyway, thank you so much for coming to read for us. And
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun.
And thank you, Jim, for producing as always. And thank you, Barbara, for keeping an eye on our audience. And I hope everybody's going to come back in June for AT Greenblatt. And I hope that everybody will contribute a little bit to the NYRSF Readings PayPal so that we can keep this going. And that's streaming as I said, streaming software unfortunately is not free. I wish it were, but that's where we are. And also we're just trying to hopefully be in a position where we can go live when we're all feeling safe again. So, everybody take good care of themselves, and I hope we'll see you all soon. And thanks again.